3 moments that proved the pride of Julius Caesar. As Caesar and his men passed through a miserable town in the Alps, one of his soldiers asked, "Do people even fight for power in such a wretched place?" Without hesitation, Caesar replied,
"I would rather be first here than second in Rome."
He valued reputation above all else. Caesar cast out Poppaea but refused to condemn her, baffling the prosecutor. If she was innocent, why did you leave her? Caesar's response became legendary.
"Because Caesar's wife must be above suspicion."
He respected his enemies even in death. Defeated by Caesar, Pompey fled to Egypt, where Pharaoh Ptolemy XIII beheaded him and offered his head to Caesar, expecting gratitude. Instead, Caesar was enraged. Even though Pompey was his enemy, he was still a Roman general, and no foreign ruler had the right to kill a respected Roman. In response, Caesar declared war on Egypt and ultimately drowned Ptolemy in the Nile. This is the unshakable pride that cemented Julius Caesar's name in history. Ancient beauty secrets. Egypt. Black coal wasn't just makeup. It was a talisman to ward off evil spirits. It was also believed to protect the eyes from the sun's harmful rays. Rome. The blonde hair trend began with slaves brought from Gaul. Roman women were so obsessed that they started wearing wigs made from Gaulish women's hair. Persia. Henna was an essential part of beauty and tradition, used to decorate hands, feet, and hair. It also held cultural significance, often used during weddings and other important rituals to bring good luck and protection. Mongols. Women intricately braided their hair and adorned it with gold and coral, turning themselves into walking works of art. Beauty standards have changed over time, but which ancient trend would you try? For some civilizations, sports weren't just games, they were a matter of life and death. Here are history's most brutal competitions. The Mayan death game. The Mayans played Pakatak, a deadly ball game where players could only use their hips and knees to pass the ball through a stone hoop. But the real horror, the captain of the losing team had to offer his head to the winning captain, who would then decapitate him. Sometimes, the entire losing team was sacrificed to please the gods. The Viking held tug-of-war. Forget the classic tug-of-war, the Vikings played a savage version using animal skins stretched over a pit of fire. The losing team had only one fate, falling into the flames. Meanwhile, the winners walked away with the spoils of their latest raid, which usually included wealth and women. Egypt's deadly jousting. The ancient Egyptians played a lethal jousting game in the Nile River. Two warriors would row at full speed toward each other, using oars as weapons to knock their opponent into the water. But falling overboard meant more than just getting wet. Crocodiles were waiting to feast. Losing was simply not an option. Which of these ancient sports would you dare to play? Drop your answer in the comments. Did you know looking this man in the eyes meant instant death? His name was Ismail Sharif, the 18th century king of Morocco, and he ruled like a god of very strange god. Despite being half black, he enslaved every black person in his empire, even those who were free. He also built one of the largest prisons for European Christians, where prisoners were shackled to walls, forced to sleep standing up. But his biggest obsession, no one was allowed to look at him. A single glance could cost you your life, and if your eyes landed on one of his 500 harem women, game over. To stay safe, people had to crawl into his presence, eyes to the ground. Yet, for someone who hated being looked at, he sure loved being noticed in one way: fathering children. A lot of them. With 888 offspring, he holds the Guinness World Record for the most children fathered in history, even surpassing Genghis Khan. The most terrifying execution methods in history. In ancient Rome, prisoners were fed to wild animals in the arena. These blood-soaked spectacles, full of screams, were entertainment for the people. The Vikings were even more brutal, with a method known as the blood eagle. They would open the backs of their victims and pull out their lungs, creating an image resembling the wings of an eagle. The Mongols believed that spilling royal blood brought bad luck. For this reason, their executions were different, pouring molten silver on the victim's head or crushing them under horses. In the Ottoman Empire, executions were carried out according to Islamic Sharia laws. Criminals were beheaded with a sword or stoned to death. In England, the gallows were preferred. The Tower of London was a frightening place where countless executions took place. During the French Revolution, the guillotine became the symbol of horror. A single sharp strike and heads would fall. Which one do you think is the most terrifying? The funniest last words before execution. James Rogers, when asked for his final request before facing the firing squad, he replied without hesitation, "Bring me a bulletproof vest." Unsurprisingly, his request was denied. Voltaire, the famous French writer and critic of the Catholic Church, was urged by a priest on his deathbed to renounce Satan. In response, Voltaire quipped, Now, my good man, this is no time to be making new enemies." Thomas More, sentenced to death by England's King Henry VIII, St. Thomas More calmly moved his beard aside as the executioner raised his axe and said, "This beard has not offended the king, so there's no need to cut it." Moments later, the axe fell. At just 20 years old, Hattori Hanzo was already a living legend. One night, he led an elite force into Kogo Castle, tasked with rescuing the emperor's kidnapped daughters. The rival clan had fortified the stronghold, but Hanzo didn't fight wars, he ended them from the shadows. Scaling walls like a phantom, he moved unseen, slipping past guards, mimicking their movements, vanishing into darkness. Room by room, his men searched, yet the princesses were nowhere to be found. The mission had been a trap. But Hanzo never retreated. Instead, he became death itself. One by one, the guards fell in eerie silence, their bodies left as whispers in the night. Then, they seized a high-ranking general. With this new hostage, the Emperor struck a deal his daughters in exchange for the enemy's commander. That night, Hanzo didn't just save the princesses. He earned a name that would haunt history forever. Only know Hanzo, the demon who strikes from the shadows. Vincent van Gogh. Genius or crazy? Maybe both. One of the most eccentric figures in the art world, Van Gogh cut off his own ear after an argument. Today, his works sell for millions, but during his lifetime, he could barely sell a single. Johannes Vermeer, the master of realism. He was so good at painting that some believe he used a kind of projection device. As for his personal life, by the age of 40, Vermeer had 15 children. Michelangelo, not just a painter, but also a sculptor, poet, and architect. For him, painting was only half the job. He almost went blind while painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. But as everyone knows, it resulted in a masterpiece. Rembrandt, one of the greatest visual artists of all time. But his life was as dramatic as his paintings. He is most known for painting his wife nude, which led to her leaving him. Leonardo da Vinci, undoubtedly at the top. The mystery of the Mona Lisa remains unsolved. Was she a model? His mother? Or perhaps his female version? Who knows? But one thing is certain, he was not just a painter, but also a scientist, inventor, and genius. Would you hunt a lion for a woman? To the death? In the Marai tribe, if you want to win the heart of a woman, you must first conquer death, but not with words or gifts, only with blood, sweat, and courage. That is why young warriors must face a lion. But this is not a hunt, it is a battle of honor. There are no weapons here, no escape. Only you and the most lethal predator of the wild. As the sun sets, a shadow moves through the tall grass, eyes glowing like stars, a golden omen of death. At that moment, the warrior's heart pounds like a drum, but he does not step back, because here, fear belongs only to the weak. The lion charges like a storm, its claws tear through the air. The warrior swiftly dodges, blood drips onto the earth. If he falls, history will forget, but if he stands, his name will echo through eternity. Did you know that some women turned marriage into a secret weapon? The real war sometimes took place in the background, in homes, and in the relationships between families. While American soldiers were paid 5 times more than British soldiers, extra payments were made not only to their own lives, but also to their wives and children. In other words, every American soldier could earn additional bonuses by showing at least one woman as married. This pushed British women into the marriage market, and those who registered 3 or even for American soldiers as their husbands increased. Thus, the number of soldiers who did not go to war but benefited from the payments increased. After all, the greater the difficulties of war, the stronger the strategic aspect of marriage.